What's going on, guys? This is Coach Bronson, and we're going to talk about something that is commonly talked about, something that we've all heard phrases, but many people don't really know how to actually do, and many people don't actually kind of implement it into everything that they do when it comes to fitness and exercise. Okay, we're talking about core activation. We're talking about bracing. Two common phrases for the same kind of thing. Core. I'll learn how to spell. Trying to do core and activation at the same time. Core, activation, okay, or bracing. Two common phrases for basically the same thing. Now, why is this important? First off, what is the core? The core is when we talk about engaging your core, when we talk about strengthening your core. Many people think of the core as their abs, okay? And that is part of the core. The core is your abs, your obliques, your lats, your erectors, all of the muscles. Essentially, everything from your hips to your shoulders can be considered your core. Your core is your torso, okay? Your body is made up, right, of two major pieces of structure: shoulder girdle, hip girdle, right? And it's connected by a spinal column. Your core is all of the muscles and everything that's activated, that's used here to keep these two things working together. What happens is if you get the top half moving differently than the bottom half, or the bottom half moving differently than the top half, there's a couple things that happen. You lose power. Okay, that means you're weaker. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. And you have an increased risk of injury. Okay, when you have the top half, let's say the top half is moving this way, right? And the bottom half is moving this way, right? If you got things going this, things going all kinds of different. If you're trying to do something and you cannot connect your hip and your shoulders, your hip and your torso together, you're going to lose power, you're going to lose strength, you're going to be weaker, and you're going to get hurt. That's where lower back issues and other issues come into play because we're not able to engage here. And what are we talking about? Engagement. Take a deep breath. Let's do it this way. Just real quick exercise everyone could do. Pretend like you're about to get punched in the stomach. Okay? That flexion, that pulling everything tight and bracing to take that punch in the stomach, whether it's a ball, maybe a ball got kicked and you flinch and clench up like that, right? That motion of reacting to about to being hit is what we're talking about activation. You instinctively suck everything in and get everything here tight. Your back tightens up, your abs tighten up, your shoulders hunch down, your rib cage comes down. That's one of the biggest signs of is your core being activated. If you're doing things and your rib cage is up, then I know you're not activating your core. I know you're not pulling in here, at least the front side, the front part of your core, and you're pulling in here, keeping things tight. Okay? When you're like this, now that means if I'm standing straight and my rib cage comes up and I'm trying to press, okay, I'm not getting as much power through that press because this isn't tight. I can't engage and create foundation in my legs and have that power transfer go from my hips into my arms, right? If I'm bent over and then I have a break, right, where my rib cage comes out, it's the same thing. I just bent over, right? Now, I lose power if I'm pulling. I put more strain on my lower back, and I do all sorts of things there that are not good for performance and safety. Okay, rib cage down is one of the most common cues for making sure your core is engaged when you're doing exercises. So there's a concept called core to extremity. Okay, core to extremity. All right, what that means, what that's all about is it's the principle that anytime we generate power, anytime we try to move an object quickly, slowly, heavy, light, whatever, any movement that we have is generated from our core. It's generated from our center of gravity, from the primary point of movement, okay, in our body, which is in this area. It's our hips, right? If I want to throw a ball, the first thing that I want to move is my hips, and then my arm follows afterwards. I generate, the power starts here. It travels up through my torso, through my shoulder, and then the fastest part of the end of the chain is my fingers as I let go of the ball. Okay, it's like a bullwhip. Okay, bullwhip, you have the handle, you start moving the handle. When you start moving the handle of a bullwhip, the end of the whip isn't doing anything until at the very end, it becomes the fastest moving part of the whip. Okay, it's the same with our body. If I'm pushing, right, if I'm pushing weight, right, if I'm pushing, let's use this as an example. I have something in front of me and I'm pushing. If I stand still and I don't do anything with my body and I just push with my arms, okay, the only muscles involved are the arms, that, you know, my bicep, my tricep, my forearms, a little bit of my shoulder. Okay, I'm pushing. The limit of how much I can push is based solely on what the strength of the muscles in my arm are. Okay, when we utilize core to extremity, if I lean in, if I push my hips into it, and I get my body into the motion, now I'm adding an incredible factor of muscle activation through my body that I can then push into whatever object I'm pushing with my arm. So not only do I have my arm as part of the process, or part of the power being generated, but my whole body's engaged, because power is going through from my hips, through my core, to my shoulders, to my arm. Okay, that's what core to extremity is. Using your body to generate the power, create the foundation for strength, and then expressing it through your extremities. Your extremities are your arms and your legs. Okay, so here's the deal. If you don't have that, you will lose power in your exercises, and you will be weaker when it comes to doing things that require strength. Okay, if you cannot engage your body when you're doing exercises, you are going to be weaker and not as powerful. All right. There are lots of different ways, lots of different things that you can do, and tons of different exercises to think about, am I using my body to help with this movement? That could be a whole nother video. I try to call out in a lot of the different movement videos that I do, where you've heard me say this before. You should have heard me say this before. Every exercise is a core exercise. Okay? Every exercise is a core exercise, guys. Everything you're doing, you should think about, how is my core engaged? How am I utilizing my whole body to do this movement? Even when you're doing curls, okay? You may sit here and think about, okay, I'm doing curls. That's great. What do I need to worry about with my core here? If you're just hanging out here and you're doing curls, I guarantee you're using more shoulder than you are bicep. Okay? What you want to do is you want to pull your lats. Lats are part of your core. Okay? The back side of your arm, underneath your armpit. You want to pull the shoulder blades down, lock everything in here tight, squeeze your obliques and your abs, keep that in tight, and focus on just your bicep doing the work. If you're loose and you try to work, you're going to compensate by other things trying to stabilize that don't need to be working. You're not trying to work that. Okay? Whether it's isolation movements, whether it's full body movements, deadlifts, thrusters, back squats, front squats, goblet squats, burpees, all those things. Core activation is key. All right? When it comes to injury, here's why core is super, super important when it comes to injury. Okay? This is your spine, right? This is your hips. This is your rib cage. Okay? It's a bad hips, but that's your rib cage, right? This is your spine. Your spine creates pressure on one side. Okay? What is here between your hips and the front side? This is the front side. This is the back side. There's nothing. This whole space, there's no bones there. right? There's no spinal column there. There's no joints. It's open space. Between your rib cage and your hips, it's open, okay? This is why your core, all the muscles in your abs are important. Your lats, right? Your back muscles, because what that does is it tightens this whole area up so that this issue of things collapsing in, because your hips are solid, your rib cage and your shoulders are solid, but you've got all that space in the middle. So you need muscles in the back to keep things up, right? And you need muscles in between to keep things from collapsing and to keep things tight so that you don't hurt your spine. Okay, you've got a big open space. You've basically got a big open space with two weights on the top. And the only thing, think about it, the only thing here between your rib cage and your hips is about 6 to 8 inches of spinal column. That's it. So you need to have core activation, keeping things tight so that you don't collapse forward or that you don't collapse backwards or sideways. Okay, there's all 360 degrees, guys. That's why core is 360 degrees, because it's not just your abs, okay? Learning how to activate your core, learning how to brace, right? That clenching feeling, learning how to keep that and use that to generate power through your appendages, through your extremities, learning how to do that to maintain proper motion. That's why if you have good core activation, when you do a deadlift, you don't let your back round this way, or you don't let it go too much this way, and you make sure that you focus on the hips. So range of motion in your hips and actual activation of the joints that you're trying to move is another part of maintaining core integrity, okay? So that's basically what we're talking about when we talk about core activation and bracing. We can go into some tips on bracing maybe in another video, because there's a lot of different exercises and different ways to think about how to bracing. It also goes really well with talking about breathing and how important breathing is when you're doing exercises. All right, if you have any questions, as always, please let me know, and we'll keep hitting topics like this as frequently as we can. See you.